Right, welcome to a new football show on Paul's Play-by-Play. I'm Paul. You would probably have seen me by now on YouTube. Also, you can catch me on TikTok at Paul's Play-by-Play and also on X ranting about football many times. But also, I wanted to kind of let you guys know on a new thing that I've been doing. As you are probably aware, I am a Tottenham Hotspur fan. And I am now doing a Tottenham fan account with the guys at Sleeper. If you don't know who Sleeper are, they are one of the biggest fantasy sports sites, what would you say, in the world, definitely in America, and they're growing and growing and growing. So you'll see lots more about them from me. But yes, I will be Sleeper Spurs, so please give me a follow in there. And I am joined by the guy that runs the Man City account for Sleeper at Sleeper Spurs. Oh, Spurs, sorry, Sleeper Man City. It is my man Troy. How you doing, Troy?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on the show. You could check out my work at Sleeper Man City on TikTok and also on X. You could find me at NHL SOG for shots on goal guy. That's where I play some moves for hockey. I know that isn't so popular on your side of the pond, but
I know nothing about hockey, mate.
sports
I've
and
got to be
fun is
honest.
what we're here for, right? So let's hop right into it.
I know it's brilliant. No, look, I think that the reason why we are together is because it's a big game on Wednesday between both sides. We've been messaging each other now for a fair few sort of weeks, a couple of months since we've been doing the work we sleep, and we've obviously been enjoying growing our fan accounts, talking about Tottenham, talking about Man City. But we have got a big game on Wednesday night between Tottenham and Man City, and we will talk loads about that. We'll talk about, I guess, our predictions for that, but also I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of reflect on both teams' seasons, I think, so far, and kind of where we feel the season has gone for Man City and Tottenham, and what we can maybe look forward to potentially, or our predictions, I suppose, for where we think both clubs are going to go for the rest of the season and maybe even a bit beyond. But before we get into that, I want to kind of, obviously, I've introduced you a little bit, but Troy, I want to know, right? You can kind of tell by the accent that it's not the strongest of Mancunian accents I can kind of get there. Where are you from? Why Man City? How long you been a Man City fan for? Give me a bit of insight into your, I suppose, your Man City life, I suppose.
Yeah, so I'm from New York, obviously. I don't sound like I'm over here from England, but we call it soccer over here. When I started working for Sleeper, I'm trying to adjust myself to say football more often now. So my first exposure to ever watching any game was 2006 World Cup final. That was the first game I ever watched in fourth grade. One of my friends came into class, shaved his head bald, and everyone was like, dude, why are you bald? We're in fourth grade. There's no reason that you should be bald. And he said, Del Piero just scored the game winner to send Italy to the World Cup final. And the kid's name was Vincenzo, Italian family. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll watch this World Cup chaos. That was the first introduction I had. Football doesn't get really good media coverage over here, so I don't just turn on ESPN and see highlights of stuff. So that's like one thing that I think is a little different between my experience and yours, especially coming up. And my next big experience was the 2010 World Cup. Everyone knows Diego Forlan had won the Golden Boot, had an incredible World Cup there. And that's when it started to get a little bit more coverage over here, mainstream wise, football wise. You would start seeing highlights, players getting covered. You'd actually see Premier League and La Liga games on TV, which wasn't really popular. You'd see Champions League once in a while, but that's when I found Aguero because I kind of started following Diego Forlan after the iconic 2010 World Cup and just the way Aguero was dribbling past people at that time. Obviously, he profiles to a completely different player than Diego Forlan. Followed him over to Man City. Man City played a preseason game versus Chelsea at Yankee Stadium. Obviously, that's New York where I live, so I saw them play that game, which also was the Champions League final where Dortmund versus Bayern Munich. I watched the game on the Jumbotron in the
Yeah.
stands there in the pouring rain with everyone, which was an awesome experience. And yeah, I've basically been watching Man City for almost 15 years now because of Sergio Aguero, and he's my favorite player in club history. So I've been hooked ever since.
Some would argue you've kind of got supporting Man City at probably the best ever time to start supporting Manchester City because obviously, like, I remember when I grew up, Man City were a team that they were originally a bottom half team in the Premier League. when I was very young, started watching Premier League football. And then they got relegated. Then they got relegated again. And I even remember I think what would be now what the League One playoff would be, which was obviously the Division Two playoff, where they played Gillingham in that playoff final. I think Paul Dickoff was the guy that managed to get them over the line and that. And then obviously they got back into what is now the Championship and then back into the Premier League. And then they still had a bit of a period where wasn't sure what was going on. There was obviously the shadow of Manchester United for many, many years. Man United were the dominant force in Premier League football, especially in them sort of the first, 16 to 20 years of the Premier League. And then obviously the money came for Man City, and then it really changed things, didn't it? And then ultimately, you've got this well-oiled machine, I think, on and off the pitch. Even though I think Man City have not maybe had the best of seasons, I think they are a team that there's an envy, I think, from a lot of us in terms of like, not only is it a great team that's on the pitch, but also the ownership's just like, it's incredible. The way they support the team in terms of they want to win things. It must be incredible to be a Man City fan, for sure.
Yeah, in recent time it has, but to be honest, I remember when I started really supporting them when I was younger, and you know what? Compared to what it is now, they didn't have a strict tactical identity, so that was one big difference. They played 4-4-2, and literally I don't even think there's a team in the Premier League that plays two strikers consistently nowadays.
Yeah.
I guess Brighton kind of does in a sense with João Pedro and Danny Welbeck, but João Pedro's more behind Danny Welbeck. They're
And
not side by
do you think
side.
that's something that's going to come back? Because I think this is an interesting point, actually. Is teams don't tend to play with two up front anymore. But I get the feeling that that might start to change a little bit with maybe how the possession based teams that always seem to play one up front, they're not dominating games the same way as they once did. Like I look at someone like I know Nottingham Forest play one up front, I suppose, but there is teams that are looking to play two up top, play a bit more, looks a little bit more like a traditional formation, and they might actually get a bit of success. Do you think that's something we're going to see more of, or do you think it's just going to be a case of we're still going to see plenty of teams with that one man up front and two wider players alongside them?
I think it's going to take a while because I was having this discussion with my friend the other day. I think we're going to a more winger driven league. Because if you look at all the teams that have serious impact in the Champions League or their own league, respectively, they have dynamic wingers that take people on 1v1 and aren't afraid to take risks. Look at Barcelona, look at Rafinha, look at Lamine Yamal. Look at Real Madrid with Vinicius and
Yeah.
Rodrigo. Even look at Liverpool with Luis Diaz and Mohamed Salah. When you have the ability to bring the ball out wide and attract defenders to you, it just opens up a late run in the box. I would know because Dominic Szoboszlai was making late runs in the box this past weekend, making me
We'll get
cry.
into that later. We'll get into that later.
But
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. I think the number 10 classic role is kind of slowly fading away. The more prevalent wingers are becoming over time.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you mentioned Salah. I mean, Salah's. Oh, we'll go to your game a bit later on, but I mean, he's been incredible from being that wide position, and he would even say he's a striker in his own self-admission. He still sees himself as a wide player, a winger. I mean, he's a winger that scores goals, basically, isn't he? Like he's absolutely incredible. But I think it will be interesting how teams do shift into kind of do they go back to more of a two-man up front, trying to gain a bit more because I just think at the moment you're seeing teams kind of getting boxed off quite easily in games. And it's like they don't want to put a ball in the box or put a cross in because ultimately they've got one guy up there. And the one guy they might have, he might not necessarily be the most physically empowering of players either. But at the same time, you've got backwards and sideways. No one's going anywhere, and it's easy to defend against. And I just do wonder if teams might start actually just trying something a little bit different or going back to something that was more sort of prevalent in sort of like yesteryear, especially in teams that we would be seeing growing up in the Premier League maybe 20 odd years ago, potentially.
Yeah, I think we might even see some really funky formations moving forward because as we see, like when Man City are in possession, they more or less have two defenders. And I think we could honestly see some 4-2-4s in the near future in the Premier League just because there are some teams that really trust their ability to not turn the ball over. And I think you could see a top level team like maybe even Aston Villa with the wealth of attacking talent they just acquired run something like that. Because every time I try to break down and analyze Aston Villa, I'm like, okay, are they playing like a 4-3-1-2, or is this more of a 4-3-3? Because you don't know, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Rodgers is kind of playing in behind Watkins all the time, but there's always one guy that's kind of wide, and maybe McGinn once in a while fades up into the left side
yeah.
and a Luka Dean overlap to like create the false sense of a left winger. So I'm curious to see if Aston Villa would be a team to try something out like that, honestly.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. It's. I think it's just now. This is a really interesting bit. Actually, I'm gonna go into something slightly related, but like we're talking about formations, we're talking about very tactically like based stuff, which obviously I think wasn't really as big a thing. I think when I first started watching football, basically, like when I grew up, sort of in the 90s, watching Premier League football into sort of I would say between sort of 2000 and 2010. I think the things that I'm pretty certain weren't really a high in sort of like conversation was tactics and formations as it is now, and also statistics. And I'm gonna and I'm tying this actually to the reason why I'm bringing this up because you mentioned obviously we know you're from New York and you started watching Premier League football. You said is it around? Well, you started watching around about 2006, but it was around about like what 2010
Yeah,
ish.
Aguero came to City in 2011, so that's the
Yeah.
first time I like sat down and watched every single Man City game.
And do you think at that time there was a big boom in American audiences watching Premier League and watching what you would call soccer, football? Like, was that the
Yeah,
time
there.
it really started to really kick off? Because now I assume it's massive now. I mean, I've been over to the States, I've been over to Canada as well, and it's always on. It's always being advertised everywhere, right? It's like being at home, basically. Like we go to a pub that shows football here. It's going to be advertised. Oh, these are the games. It's the same. From what I've seen in the States and in Canada as well. So like. Yeah, for me, it's kind of like it feels like that was a real prominent time when it kind of all started booming for you guys in the Premier League. And I mean, how big is in your own sort of mind? How big is it over there now?
Because I'll put it into perspective like this, because there's always launch spots. Because obviously, comparatively, it's not as popular as the NFL, but it's getting huge.
Yeah,
In 2006, I barely knew anyone that watched. And in New York, I would say that I have no statistical backing of this, but I would be willing to argue that the majority of people here are of Italian descent. So when Italy wins the World Cup in 2006, it booms. 2010, although the USA didn't make a deep run, like they had a huge win versus Ghana. They had people were emotionally hooked. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
also when Clint Dempsey goes over to the Premier League and has some success and can score, Fulham and Tottenham were teams that were slowly getting
Great
popular
player, though.
over
He was a great.
time.
I liked Dempsey. I know he was at Tottenham for about a year, but he was a good player for it, and he was brilliant for Fulham. Yeah, no, you and there was, and there, he wasn't the only one, was it? There was quite a few American players that have come over and done all right. Actually, we used to get loads of American goalkeepers. Actually, let's get from
Yeah, we
like
get
Brad
two
Fried,
Tom.
to
He goes
Casey
on the
Keller, always
broadcast every
onwards.
day over here. He's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. But yeah, but the point I was kind of going with it is that since the boom of, I suppose, a US audience, one of the things I've always noticed when watching US sports, like when you watch NFL or the NBA, it is very the things that get talked about a lot are stats, especially in NFL. It's like everything's about stat, right? It's all about like how many passing yards has this quarterback made over the season, rushing yards for the year, like receiving yards, sacks, tackles, all the it is very statistical basis, but there's also lots about formations in them sports, right? And setups and what's the play going to be basically? How are they going to actually like, how does an offense overcome this defense and vice versa? And I think actually that influence from that American audience has transcended over to our football, I think, quite a lot, like generally do. And I think now we're so much more wiser to stats in football and especially formations than I think we were 15, 20 years ago, for sure. Like we are now talking about like it's not just stats like very basic stats. Like we back in the day would be, I think, talking about how many corners there were in a game was probably the groundbreaking stat, right? Now it's very much like how many tackles has a player made in the match, how many sprints have they made, shots on target. Like it is like it's very, very kind of like there's a lot more to it. And we're talking a lot more about goals and assists as well. And I just wonder, like, I don't know if you think the same, but do you think there's been a bit of an influence there from maybe a US kind of audience that we are now talking more about statistics in games and probably formations a little bit more?
Yes, for sure. I don't know if you guys or your audience are familiar with the movie Moneyball, but
Yes, we
that's a
are.
very
Yeah,
popular
yeah,
movie over here. And that basic baseball and hockey in America are the two first sports to really go headfirst into the advanced stats era, and a lot of sports followed. And teams have seen in every sport that you can really get ahead in the analytical department, especially when we're talking about money and you're shelling out tens of millions of dollars to pay for these guys. You still need a bargain. You need guys to outperform what their annual average value is.
yeah,
So, as you've seen across all leagues, like Ajax and Porto, yeah, for sure. They're pumping out really good prospect players, but you're not getting a discount on them anymore. Look at where you're getting a lot of these players recruited from. You have Julio Enciso getting recruited from Paraguay. You
yeah.
have Kendry Paez getting taken out from Ecuador. Mikkel Damsgaard from Denmark. They're exploring way less popular leagues to get an advantage financially. And yes, it's 100% seeped over. And I don't know about the rules in England, but in the majority of the states in America, it's legal to gamble. So they are pumping out stats and stuff like that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite funny. I mean, actually, when you mentioned Moneyball, I was going to say one thing. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's our chairman Daniel Levy's favourite film of all time because I'm almost certain that is how he wants to operate in buying players and recruitment potentially. And I think sometimes it can work and sometimes it needs a bit of a balance. But going back to what you were saying about stats, yeah, because obviously gambling's been legal now for it's not been too long, is it? Has it been a few 2 or 3 years, maybe a little bit longer than that, maybe potentially. I can't remember what year it kind of all they kind of went right. Every state now has the opportunity to legalize gambling. Because not all of them have they? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I know New Jersey was one of the very first. Obviously,
Yeah,
Nevada
like
were. And then
Nevada, like New
yeah,
Jersey, they've had it forever because those are like the gambling capitals of the
yeah,
United States, more
casinos are
or
there
less. But New
already. Yeah,
York, yeah, we got it like 4 years ago. And like whether people want to acknowledge it or not, but there was an illegal gambling presence in the United States that
yeah,
was massive before it was legal. That's obviously why they did it, aside from making tons of money.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this is I find it it is fascinating because Americans have been waiting for this opportunity to do it properly, I suppose. And like for us in the UK, gambling on sports has been a thing that we grew up with. Like it's been around for decades and decades and decades. Like um, way back. I mean, I would probably need to look back at history when it kind of all started because it would have probably been centuries ago, truth be told. But obviously in the UK, it is a thing that we've been around for many, many years. I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect we was going to even talk about something like this, but I think it's quite interesting actually. But yeah, it's been around for many years. We've been used to obviously football betting and horse racing betting in particular. They're the two main sports. I still believe they might be the two biggest sports betting wise globally as well, believe it or not. And we've grown up with that, and it's evolved and evolved and evolved, like, and to the point where I mentioned about stats and I mentioned about like knowing about shots, tackles, and passes, all of this stuff. That's now seeped into the betting world in particular, and it's really a real relevant part of UK betting now. And punters, it's not just all about betting on outright sort of like or match odds, for example, where a team's going to win or draw, or over and under goals and both teams to score. They were things that were kind of a little, well, not the match odds, but both teams scoring over under goals. They were probably something new to the market now. I'm just trying to think where we are in 2025. Probably knew about 20 years ago, potentially. They were like the big things that were new. And now we're, as I said, we're talking about lots of player stat or match stat stuff and people doing bet builders and all of that kind of stuff now. It's really taken. I'd be interested. Is it at the same sort of levels in the US that you get them kind of opportunities, and are people more an American audience a bit more kind of inclined to do them kind of bets than maybe the UK market might still be. I still think there's a bit of a traditional element from the UK betting person that they still want to just kind of stick with the traditional odd stuff. But obviously there is stuff that you can bet on, as I said, that are a bit more exotic. But what is it like more so in America? As I get a bit of breath back.
Yeah, so over here for sure, the fantasy realm, obviously daily fantasy is huge over here. And the fantasy sports we play, unlike traditional FPL, similarly to sleeper fantasy football, you actually own the players, you track the stats a lot, and you trade people. So that's a huge thing. People are very dialed into players that they have ownership on their real fantasy teams. So when you have a good understanding of a certain sample size of players, you're more willing to play daily fantasy. And the player prop market specifically is extremely popular in America. I would say besides NFL, it's probably more popular than betting sides in and of itself.
Yeah.
Football, as what you guys call it, not a lot of people bet that over here in America. For a lot of people that I know that are really into gambling and take it seriously, they're afraid to bet on football because the truth of the matter is they're scared of draws. And that's some of the best betting opportunity because you can get plus a half on the spread on a team like Fulham that I feel like in certain situations they're very undervalued in the market. And the market presents fantastic value over here in America because I don't feel like there's a lot of sharp action moving the lines on a lot of these games.
I tell you what, I think there's definitely a need for maybe another video about us talking about the betting side of things, of what the culture's like, I suppose, in the US in comparison to the UK, and yeah, maybe talking about the opportunity because there definitely is, I think, for sure. And I think that when it comes to football, it's all actually generated from Asia. Believe it or not, it's always Asian money that dictates the odds of what you get for match odds in football. We could talk about that, I think, for a long, long time. I'm going to move us on a little bit because I want us to talk about the weekend, and I want to talk about. We'll keep it more of a focus on our specific teams, but we'll probably drift into some of the other things that happened. Obviously, for Tottenham, we played on Saturday. We played against Ipswich Town, a team that actually got the better of us at home earlier in the season. That game has been mentioned so many times, I think, in the media as kind of a little bit of a typical Tottenham. They can't even get a win against teams like Ipswich and rightly so, because we've been definitely inconsistent for the main part of the season. And I think for a period of the season, we've just been consistently struggling because of obviously injuries and things like that. But it was one of these games, I think, for Tottenham where a result was absolutely needed. I don't think there was any excuses this time around. I think I mentioned to you, I think maybe, I don't know if it was to you or I mentioned to someone, or I might have mentioned it in a video actually on TikTok, that people seem to forget about Spurs' last game against Ipswich in the sense that Tottenham had a game away in Turkey on the Thursday evening. They took pretty much the whole squad. They didn't play everyone in that game, or didn't start everyone in that game. Because I remember, obviously, they played Will Lancashire, who's one of our young players, who's now out on loan at West Brom. They played him up front. Solanke was on the bench. I think there was a couple of the other kind of more established players on the bench, and it was a bit of a mix of experience and a few younger players playing. We got beat in that game. I think we got beat 3-2. I think Galatasaray could have ended up winning that game 7 or 8. Osherman had so many opportunities, especially in that first half, and was either offside or missing big opportunities in that game. But we did bring on players like Solanke, so we did kind of use the squad. 3 days, or Thursday going into Sunday, we got this game against Ipswich. And bear in mind, Ipswich, for me, what people don't realise, they had 8 days to prepare for that game. So they were fresh, they were ready. It was probably one of the games that they were looking forward to the most in the season, in terms of obviously coming to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is obviously like, if you're a team that's promoted, you're going to want to play there and play your best stuff there, potentially as well. Plus, the coach is ex-Spurs. He used to be someone might correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure he was the coach for the under-21s at Tottenham for a period of time. So he knows the football club well in that. So they've got it's 8 days versus kind of 2 to 3 days worth of like prep, and I felt that was just a mess, and all that goes around it. I thought it was just a massive leveler on the day, and I remembered even saying to the guy I go to, well, one of the guys I go to sits next to me at Spurs. I said, I've got a feeling this game's not going to be as easy as what we all think because of all them reasons. And lo and behold, Ipswich got a 2-0 lead in that first half, and then they went on to win 2-1. We got one goal back, got another goal disallowed, and it was one of them. And then we got absolutely slated for months off the back of it. So going into this game, it was a big match. But with a week to prepare for it, I just felt confident that we would find a way in basically turning the result of the result around, and we managed to get a good win 4-1. Pretty pleased with it. I think there were some good performances. I don't know if you see. Did you watch any of the games? I mean, you get all the games over live in America, right? I don't know if you probably didn't bother watching our game, and I don't blame you, to be pretty honest with you as well. But I watched bits of the game, and I was pretty impressed with Lucas Bergvall's contribution in that match. I thought he was excellent for Spurs in the midfield. In fact, I think it could have been arguably his best game, I think, in a Spurs shirt. And I think he's been playing really well, even in a bad period for Tottenham. And I thought Danzo, one of the new signs, he also looked pretty strong as well. But I watched the first part of that game, and I thought we could have been about 2 or 3 down in that. Liam Delap was absolutely murderous, and he was he's ex-Man City from you guys, isn't he? I don't know what you make of him. Like, you look at him now, is he one of these players that you think, do you wish you may have kept him on a little bit now, considering he's doing really well for probably quite a poor team in the Premier League, and he's definitely going to, look, there's no doubt in my mind, he's not going to be at Ipswich next season.
Yeah, so first I want to say, of course, I was not watching Tottenham versus Ipswich, but I was watching Brighton versus Southampton, and you're probably laughing. Why are you watching Brighton versus Southampton? I had huge fantasy stake in that game. I started Tariq Lamptey, João Pedro, and Karu Matoma, and they paid off huge for me. Clean sheet from Lamptey, Matoma, and João Pedro each had attacking returns, so I was having a blast. And sorry, but I had huge
Fine.
fantasy stakes. I won a marginal win this week to keep me up in the top part of the table. So that's big. So my thing is when I'm looking at this Spurs versus not the Spurs, Liam Delap, I think Man City learned their lesson last time when they didn't activate the buyback on Romeo Lavia, because it was, I think, 45 million to bring him back, and they didn't do it. And I know Liam Delap personally probably doesn't want to go back to Man City because he knows he's not going to get consistent starting time. But at the end of the day, I think even if City buy him back, they could flip him to boost their financial fair play / PSR standing, even though they're already in good standing. Because I'm sure of it that a team like West Ham, or maybe even Fulham, because Raul Jimenez is a little bit older. As good as he is, we have to realize that he's not in the 5-year plan of Fulham moving forward as their starting striker. There are teams that, if they're serious on building up to get into the Europa League, that they would get a guy like him and pay some serious money, because on a side like Ipswich, consistently getting returns throughout the course of the season as a big target man, who doesn't want that? Seriously.
I genuinely, I look at him and I go, this is a lad that I think he's got so much potential to be. You say someone like a team like Fulham. I think he's got the ability to go even further than that. With no disrespect to Fulham in the slightest, but I look at him and go, I would quite happily have him at Tottenham as an option with Dominic Solanke. Now, he would have to fight his place with Dominic, but I think he's capable. He brings something a bit different, because what I noticed in the game against us is that he was very good at carrying the ball. Like, he's a big guy. He gets himself about. He'll let defenders know he's there. Like, that is part of his game, right? He's a bit of a throwback in that respect, but ball to feet, he gets the ball and he can run with it as well. Like, he's got that about him that can actually, like, really, like, frighten defenses. And I think personally, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him at one of the top 6 clubs. I think playing centre forward in maybe the next in 2 to 3 years' time. I really do. I wouldn't be surprised if he got a move to somewhere like a Fulham, and do really well at, like, I can imagine. I reckon he'll do well at most of them. pretty much any club next year, right? Who are probably in that kind of, I don't know, positions between sort of seventh and like mid-table, basically, where we're looking at. I think he'd be a star there, and I could see him then getting a real good move somewhere potentially. As I said, I love him at Tottenham. I really would. But I was impressed with him. He was kind of one of them players in that game where I was like, yeah, like he's a bit different to the rest of the Ipswich players that they've got by quite a distance. But overall, I was very pleased with the result. And we move on to you guys. Basically, let's talk before we get into our game, because obviously it's very rare that it feels like forever since Tottenham have won 3 games in a row, truth be told. But we've done that in the league. I'm going to point in the league as well because we did lose our FA Cup game. But let's talk about Man City for a little bit. Let's go into the game first against Liverpool. I don't think it was a massive surprise, the result in terms of the outcome, like Liverpool maybe, because Liverpool have been so brilliant this season, especially in the league. They've been pretty faultless throughout, right? And Man City have come into this in not maybe the best of form in the world. What was your feeling? What was your feelings? Was you? I get the feeling you had the same feelings going into this match, that you felt that this was not going to go Man City's way, or it was going to be very unlikely it was going to go Man City's way.
Yeah, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, and I'm going to have to dunk on my squad right now. So pardon me. So
Right.
let's get right into
I've
this.
done it all. I've been doing it for the last 3 months with my team. So
sometimes you got to do it.
You've got to go for it, mate. Let it all out.
Down here, you got to get the licks in on the players you don't like. So the first thing I want to mention is my prediction before the game started was losing 4-0. Manchester City lost 2-0,
so
and
won.
it could have been 4-0.
You've won, basically.
So it felt like I was right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now moving on. This was the big problem in the game, and I honestly don't think if Haaland played, it really would have not really would have mattered. It literally would not have mattered, and it wouldn't have changed the result at all. Okay. Marmoush and Foden, when they're in the box in a number 9-esque role, fluid false 9 type role, next to Konate and Virgil van Dijk, these guys don't even come up to their shoulder height. So as fantastic as Salvinho and Doku played on the wings, being dynamic, taking players on 1v1, making Trent Alexander-Arnold look like he had ice skates on that weren't tied up, they couldn't cross anyone. There was no threat of a cross because Foden is never going to out-jump Konate or Virgil van Dijk. And that's just the truth of the matter. Marmoush's role in this team is the support striker. Erling Haaland, he crashes the 6-yard box. He's going across the 6-yard box, getting his toe on the end of balls coming across the end of the 6, winning headers. Omar Marmoush is activated between the 18-yard line and the penalty spot as the trailer. So obviously, he's not expected to consistently win headers. And as fantastic as Salvinho and Doku played all game, there was no one to cross to.
Jeremy Doku in that game, right? Trent Alexander-Arnold must have had the weirdest experience in that game, because they've won the game. They've been in control of the game, Liverpool, right? Without disrespecting Man City, Liverpool controlled that game. But Trent was just getting absolutely terrorised every minute by Doku. Like, Doku had the beating of him so many times. He must have come off that pitch going, I've won the game, but I don't know if I feel like a winner in that match, because he got absolutely annihilated. Doku just had the beating of him, didn't he? But the problem with Doku was he got the beating of Trent, and then it was kind of like a lack of option, weren't it, to really Uber finding, because Marmoush and Foden, they were kind of, I was trying to work out what they were doing in the game. I felt like they weren't doing maybe what was expected of them. Like, I felt like Foden was dropping, especially in the second half, he was trying to drop too deep and pick the ball up in areas that really he shouldn't be picking them up from. Like, because I know with Man City, Haaland has to play a very disciplined role, doesn't he? Like, truth be told, he's there to occupy, but he ultimately, there's a lot of times in the game where he doesn't see the ball, or he doesn't, or he'll make a run, but they'll never find him. Like, he has to really be very patient. And I felt like maybe Pep was asking the likes of Foden to be a little bit more patient. I'm not saying play right up against the two centre halves because you're right. There's no point in doing that because Canate and Van Dijk will just eat him up. But I think there was an opportunity for him to play that little bit off them and play somewhere in between where maybe McAllister was and where the two centre halves were. And I felt like because he wasn't getting the ball all the time in that area, he found himself very much drifting into other positions, and it kind of it weren't helping cutting Liverpool open, and Liverpool just found, even with the issue that they had in terms of trying to deal with the likes of Doku on one side and Savinho the other, centrally they knew that they were in control of that, and it might be part of the fact that they just weren't. Players like Foden, who are great players, but maybe just wasn't disciplined enough in that kind of, in the pockets that maybe he was expected to be in, potentially.
The way that the game goes or was going, and this is a huge problem that I've had with Man City, especially in games where they struggle to open up the defense. Pep Guardiola, I understand. I understand this is possession-based football, the team's identity. But at a certain point, you have to just start cranking long shots. I'm sorry. If you know you can't get a cross in, you just have to start cranking long shots. You see this, they do it when they verse Brentford. It's like clockwork. They go in the first 45 minutes versus Brentford in the low block. They cannot get anything. Pep Guardiola yells at them. They come out in the second half. They take 20 shots from outside the box. Someone scores a rebound or a deflection that gets parried the wrong way. And we all know that Manchester City, they can't defend a counterattack to save their life. No one in the midfield has legs. No one can run. You know you're going to give up goals anyway. It's impossible for this team to keep a clean sheet. Let's take some risks, guys. Come on. We got to change it up.
That's not just I think that's been a thing for a while with football, though. We don't see enough long shots or shots from outside, like goals from outside the box, because it feels like teams, and they probably are, teams have been instructed to not take them opportunities on as much. Like, I remember, like, when I was first watching Premier League football, and I know earlier on I've been harping about the good old days, it feels like, what Premier League football was like. But there was, if you look back at the goals that were scored, there was so many from like 30, 35 yards out, 25 yards out. We don't see it anymore, do we? Like, it's very much, it's trying to keep the ball, try and work our way into the penalty box. And obviously, like, they'll have people that are working on XG. What's the XG rate conversion of, like, if we're in this spot, you've got more of a chance of scoring than, say, a bit further out. But sometimes you need to mix it up and actually catch teams by surprise a little bit. And, like, you could have a shot from outside the box and it could nick off a Liverpool defender. It roll foots Alisson and it goes into the back of the net and you're back in the game then. And then all of a sudden, you're giving, there's more to think about from a defensive point of view now. Like, I think a lot of these defenders probably think, well, I don't need to close someone down because they're going to have a shot. Like, they're not thinking about that anymore. They just think, if I hold a position, they're not going to shoot anyway. All they're looking to do is try and play a little pass left or right or through. I'm in the position for that. But if they do have a shot, it kind of then opens up the defenders will start second guessing a lot more. And I do think it's something that I think in football needs to kind of happen a bit more from teams a little bit. And I think you kind of agree with it. Man City have been the kings of trying to score the perfect goal, right?
And it's the hockey fan in me, because hockey is my second favorite sport. And there's a common theme of teams that are successful in hockey.
Yeah.
Offense generated from the back end, which is defense. And teams that are good in hockey, their defenders that are high in the zone or long shots in hockey, they take a lot of long shots in hockey to create offense through rebounds and chances in front of the net. Not every shot has to be perfect, played into feet. Send in a cross, have someone jump up in there and try to get the ball, have someone clear it out when they feel uncomfortable because they don't know who's over their shoulder. The ball bounces out to the top of the box and you get a goal. That's how it happens. Not everything has to be perfect.
No, exactly. And talking about a player that, I'd say if there's one player in your team that may be a little bit more known for taking a shot from maybe outside the box is Kevin De Bruyne. I watched him yesterday in the game against Liverpool and he just does not look the player that I think we would know and remember from years ago. Like, I know everyone can have a bad game, but do we think that this is definitely going to be maybe Kevin's last season at Man City potentially? Because to me, he looked a bit lost. And actually, I thought one of the real interesting parts of the game. Don't know if you think this as well, but Marmoush was taking all of the set pieces and the free kicks that I would kind of just expect Kevin De Bruyne to be taking, and he's not even doing that now. And he's very much like from set pieces, dropping off a bit deep. It's not even in and around the penalty box as such anymore. I don't know what your feelings on. I mean, obviously Kevin's been a brilliant player for Man City, one of the best midfielders in recent Premier League history. But it just feels like his position and his influence in this team is nowhere near the same as it once was.
Well, the truth of the matter is, in the past couple of years, he's been destroyed by injuries. In the treble winning season, we all know I watched the documentary, the 5-part Netflix documentary. In the back end of the Champions League run, De Bruyne was literally managing an injury, falling apart. We all know every
Yeah.
time he makes it to the Champions League final, he can't finish the game. He left injured. Next season starts. He nurses the hamstring injury, no surgery, comes back against Burnley, destroys it, goes under the
Yeah.
knife, misses almost the entire season. And you know as well as I know, I'd rather have any of my players break bones than soft tissue injuries because the soft tissue injuries are always recurring and they
Yeah.
never come back the same. And in effort to try to manage him not getting injured, he's given the free pass to not have to track back and put pressure on these guys in high press. He does it sometimes. He doesn't do it too much so he doesn't get injured. And when you play midfield, one of the requirements to have a well-balanced working midfield is guys to have legs, putting out fires, getting in people's faces so the defenders can slot back in position. Man City, when they're in possession, they have two defenders. If they don't have midfielders putting out the fires with these guys in transition, letting Vardy and Rico Lewis get back that are playing left wing and center attacking mid in possession, there's only two guys back. You know what I'm
And
saying?
he's not that guy anymore, is he? Like, or I think that's so key with why Man City maybe have not been as great. You see, is the energy in midfield, right? It's the lack of get players who can get around the pitch, like create problems in terms of for the team that's in possession, getting the ball back quickly off them, then getting it, moving it about quickly. It feels like it's a big. I mean, obviously Rodri's been a massive miss for Man City, like no doubt about it, but it does feel like it's been a bit of an aging midfield in there. And I look at Kevin, and Kevin De Bruyne is not going to be the player that's going to be able to like run around the pitch and doing things that you said that is needed. But what is he going to be doing on the pitch? Because the other thing he's obviously very good at is he's good with ball at feet. He's good at set pieces. He's obviously got look, his range of passing is just out of this world. But it felt like to me in the game that he wasn't able to do that stuff. Even so, like he was very limited to what he actually could bring into the game. It was almost a bit like actually, when you really look on reflection, was he the right choice of midfielder for Man City in a game like that against Liverpool? Probably not on reflection. I know it's easy to say once the game's gone, but if you're not going to get him being the player that he can where he does his best stuff, which is on the ball, he ain't going to be able to do the other stuff that you kind of want as well, because it's never really been his game recently. And with all the injuries that you mentioned, he's never going to be able to do that, is he?
Yeah, and I don't know how your news sources are interpreting this, but over in the United States, it is smoke where there is fire. He is apparently going to San Diego in the MLS, which is the new expansion team. And
Oh, De
it's not
Bruyne.
official, obviously, but that's what they're saying.
Really? Because he got really heavily linked to Saudi, didn't he? He was gonna. There was a bit of talk. I can't remember if it was in the summer or the summer before. He was linked with a move to Saudi Arabia, and obviously for mega money, but he never materialised. And obviously he's on incredible money at Man City anyway. But I think apparently they were prepared to pay him something ridiculous. Like we're talking maybe like a million pounds a week or something like that, or €1 million a week, like out of this world stuff. But he never materialised, and I think maybe there was a feeling that he still felt that he could play at the very top level in Europe, in the Champions League, obviously in the Premier League. So to hear that he might go MLS, I mean, that'd be great. I think that'd be a great move into. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think I'd like a move to San Diego. It's very nice down there in California. But that's interesting. If that's the case, I mean, that'd be a hell of a move, obviously, for the MLS. Um, and a bit of a different move, I suppose, to maybe what might have been expected, him going to maybe Saudi Arabia and maybe finishing his career off there. In terms of I mean, obviously that we're talking about Kevin De Bruyne here. What's your feeling for Man City, I suppose, for the rest of the season? What is there you think maybe to play for now? And potentially we could segue that onto what are you expecting Man City to maybe do after the season's finished, and with this squad at the moment, what changes could you maybe expect potentially to see there?
Well, clearly the most important thing right now is qualifying for the Champions League. They need to finish in the top four. Newcastle, when they're on, they're on. We saw this past weekend. They can score at will. They're tied with Newcastle on points for that fourth spot. So there is no chance we're salvaging a trophy for this season. Honestly, I've come to terms with that.
You're still in the FA Cup, aren't you? Is that right?
Yeah, but I'm sorry, but I really just like we genuinely just don't have the depth to compete against these teams. It's the truth. Like
Yeah.
it sucks to say, and I respect all these players that are currently on the team that won the treble for us and so many trophies before, but they've given everything that they've had to give. Kevin De Bruyne sacrificed his hamstring and 2 years on the bench to get us that treble. He may never be the same again, and he's a club legend.
I
But
don't think he is. I don't think he is by all accounts. I never watched that documentary, so it's interesting that you've mentioned there. They obviously very focused about his injuries in that period of time. But you genuinely don't think Man City could get a FA Cup trophy under their belt, or
no, maybe it's just the sports better in me, and it's like
right?
taking over the fan in me. But I'm like way too realistic and rational to believe that we could like get any piece of silverware from this season. And I look at this team, and I don't think a lot of these guys are safe because if you look at the signings Man City has historically gotten since the new ownership, they're usually between 25 and 27-year old, like right in their prime. They have
So
enough experience they could get plugged right in type players.
I was going
And
to say you've got the high. I think you have got the highest average squad in the Premier League. Certainly the players that play. Yeah, I think it was. I think the average age in for Man City was around about like 29 or something like that, which is one of the. I think West Ham are very much close to that as well. Believe it or not, of all teams. But it was interesting that it is an older squad now, isn't it? And you can kind of see it.
And one of the big problems that I also think we have is our wingbacks don't actually profile as wingbacks. As silky as Vardiol is on the ball, he's a left-sided center back that could honestly round out a three in the back when Man City are in possession. Obviously, we need center backs, we need workhorse midfielders, and we really need a right back desperately because someone like Jeremy Frimpong who can actually get up the field and get back in possession quickly and put out a counterattack because he has some legs. You know what I'm saying? And another player that I'm really interested in, and I know he's on Man City's radar, but the likelihood of him coming over as his form is increasing, I don't know. Ederson on Atalanta. This guy's a
Yeah.
box-to-box bruiser. Last year, when Atalanta were in a pinch, he was playing as a number 10 and got further up the field. So he obviously has that touch in front of goal and the ability to be creative. But he really is a number 8, and that's exactly the profile player we need on our team right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Edison's been a player that Tottenham have been a little bit linked with as well in the past. He's a player I think we need in that midfield for sure because I definitely think we need a player that can run the game in midfield from maybe a slightly deeper position that can do that. And I think Edison would do that for sure. I think when you say I don't know if we could get them. I think Man City can get pretty much anyone is in my mindset. Like I don't think there's anyone off limits for Man City. So when it comes to Tottenham, I'm like, well, God, like there's so many other factors. Like yes, we've got the money, but will we spend it? It's one of these kind of things. Will we be that ambitious? Man City, normally you're the very best at. If you want a player, we go and get it, basically. And I think if they wanted Edison, they'll go and get him. You mentioned Frimpong there. I'm sure. Am I right in thinking
He's former Man
he
City.
was a former Man City? So that's another one where you're like, it's just like
Bring
this
him back,
academy that Man
baby.
City have is unbelievable, isn't it? It's like all these players just seem to like go very under the radar, don't they? And then all of a sudden they become big, and then they end up probably getting linked to Man City, and then the news comes, oh yeah, they're at Man City like 10 years ago as an academy player. Like yeah, I was like, what is going on? The conveyor belt of that academy's unbelievable, right?
Yeah, seriously. And another one that I'm not sure if you're aware of, Jamie Bino Gittins on Borussia Dortmund.
Yes, yeah,
He
yeah.
tore his ACL when he was at the
He's
Man
another
City
player linked with us, by the
Academy.
way.
What?
He's another player that's linked with us at the moment.
Oh, if
I
you could,
don't know. I've got to be honest with you, Troy. Like when we get these links after the January transfer window, so we normally get a lot of big links to players between sort of mid-February all the way through to about April, May. And the reason why a lot of Spurs fans think this is because it's season ticket renewals. And
mm.
it's all about these new, oh, Tottenham are going to get this player in the summer, blah blah blah. I think, oh, that'd be good. Yeah, I'll renew my season ticket. We get a lot of these sort of take it with a pinch of salt kind of news. But apologies. Yeah, no, he's another player that's been linked with Tottenham recently for big money, real big
And
money as
he's
well.
fantastic. And it was just unfortunate because his circumstance, like he tore his ACL, and like you said, the conveyor belt of talent. They're like, "Oh, you tore your ACL. We'll let your contract expire." And Dortmund, being the talent factory that they are, they're like,
They're very
"We can
good at
get this
identifying young
gem
talent.
on a free, and then
Yeah.
flip him for however much we want to." And I'm really excited for this game. I'm really excited for this game. I actually checked, and it says the bookies have you guys as a favorite.
Are you joking?
I think you guys are.
Do you know what? I've not actually checked the odds, right? And if I was
Oh no, we're plus 100, so we're the favorites.
I was going to say, I thought, oh, how are we favourites?
Which is wrong because we can't beat you guys at your
No,
stadium.
we've got this very, very weird hoodoo over Man City. Yeah, you're around about even money. Um,
Yeah, you guys.
we're about 12 to 5, which is what, plus 360, I think, for you guys in America. Um,
Oh, we get plus 220 here.
oh,
No, there's a difference in odds.
222, no, 260. Is it plus 260? I always get it. It's plus 260 is what we get over here. I always get it. I've got to get used to American odds, I think, because you do it all by if you place $100 on a bet, it's the return, isn't it? Like what
Yeah.
you get. Yeah, yeah. I get it. No, it should. I mean, it should be a good game. I mean, before I get into, I mean, with Tottenham at the moment, I think we are. As I said, we've come off of 3 games now, or 3 wins on the trot in the Premier League, albeit it's kind of been a bit. It's not been the most smoothest of 3 games, I would say. Like we've battled our way. We've obviously when we played Brentford away, I don't think anyone gave us a hope. We come away with a win there at a place where they're really good at home, and you'll know with Brentford at the moment, their attack at the moment is purring. And they're full of goals at the moment with Visa and Buemo, Kevin Sade on the left, and then obviously Damsgaard just kind of knitting it all together. They look really, really good. But we got a result there with a team that was overplayed, not loads of confidence as such. I think Ben Davies did Kevin Danso play that game? I don't think he did. But anyway, we got a good win there. Great result. Then we beat, who did we beat in between? Was it Leicester? I think it might have been. My brain's gone. I was definitely at the game. Wherever the home game was, it was against Leicester. I think it was against Leicester. We won that, and then obviously we beat Ipswich. So look, we've won some games. We've got a little bit of momentum going into this. I think the interesting thing for Tottenham going into this game against Man City is that we obviously play you on Wednesday night, and then we don't play another game for 8 days because we don't. Obviously, we got knocked out of the FA Cup. Obviously, one of the trophies that we wanted to try and win. But I actually do think if we're going to have any chance of winning this Europa League, which I still think there's a chance of it. We're the favourites to win the tournament, which I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't put a penny on it, truth be told, because I still think there's some things that need to be answered first before that would be something I would really consider maybe telling people to do, because I think one of the things for us at the moment is injuries, and we need to get players back. And there's always a bit of a doubt, I think, in terms of can we get players fit for the rest of the season. But I think if we can get obviously a Romero back, a Van der Ven and Dominic Solanke, who are like kind of now the three, I feel like are the three main players that are missing. If we can get them back, we've got a chance in that competition, because I don't think it is a strong renewal of the Europa League, especially with the new format now, and especially with Champions League teams not dropping into that competition for the first time. So I do think there's an opportunity for Tottenham in the rest of the season, going deep in Europa League. I do think we'll get through AZ Alkmaar in the next knockout stages of that. And then I think my guess is we'll probably get Frankfurt. And I know they're not got Marmoush anymore, who's now at Man City, but I still think they're a smart team in Germany, and I think they won't be easy in that quarterfinals. But going to the game against Man City, yeah, I am looking forward to it. Actually, it's a strange game, isn't it? In some respect, it's always been a strange fixture, and it's always felt like a really big game between these two sides when we play against one another. I always feel like everyone sits and watches this match, because it's always produced drama, brilliant moments, goals, like the lot. The only thing I would say that's different to this game is I just feel like maybe the two teams are not. Man City are not obviously playing for a title anymore, right? So the aim now, we mentioned about Man City, is that they're playing for top four, or even top five might be good enough now for the Champions League. I still think, I'm going to never ask you this before we get into it a little bit more. Do you think Man City will finish in the top four or get into the Champions League next year? Considering you didn't fancy yourselves for the FA Cup.
I'm gonna say no, because their next like 4 or 5
Really?
games are horrific. So if fifth place is good enough to get in, I'll say yes. But if it's not, then I'm gonna say no.
I think you will. Yeah, I think you will. I think you'll find a way. I think Pep will find something towards the end of the season. I think he'll definitely be playing your new players a lot more, and he will be trying to get them blooded into the way of playing for Man City. So I think Marmoush will play a lot. Is it Nico Gonzalez who's been playing in midfield? I think he'll play most games. And I think he'll give the two. I think Kuzanov's been playing quite a lot anyway, isn't he? Is it Victor Rez? Is he the other one? But he's not really played.
Yeah, he's 18, so I don't
Yeah, so I
expect
don't
him
know
to
whether
play. I
he'll.
don't expect him to really get
No,
any starting time.
but I think he'll find a way for you. And I just look around. I look at the teams around, and I think there's still question marks about a few of them. I think Chelsea are going for a bit of a period where they were. I mean, 2 months ago they were talked about for the title. Now they're falling off a cliff. Um, it'll be interesting to see whether the likes of Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth are up there can handle the pressure that they've never been in before. Like, and I always think this with Bournemouth, actually. They're an interesting case study, because everyone's going on about Iriola and how great a job he's done at Bournemouth, and he has done an amazing job at Bournemouth, and they've had injuries as well and everything, and he's managed to manage them extremely, extremely well. But the expectations at Bournemouth have never really been high. They've, like, truth be told, like Bournemouth are a team that I don't think they're in a position where they'll ever really, like, you'd ever fear from getting relegated, but you wouldn't necessarily expect them to do anything big in the league either. If they manage to get if they managed to get a European spot, it'd be a massive achievement for that football club. The fact that they're fighting for a Champions League position, I think, is incredible. But the pressure will intensify for them, and it'll be interesting to see how the likes of Bournemouth manage that. And I think Man City won't have that kind of pressure. I think they'll have that, if anything, expectation of, we are Man City, we're going to go and do this. So I do think Man City will get there. Newcastle could be a team that could come up there potentially. And Aston Villa, I look at them, it all very much depends how deep they go in the Champions League, I think, whether that becomes a bit more of a distraction, because I do think they struggle playing the amount of games they do. They seem to have, they do well in the Champions League, and then they have a drop off the weekend after. That is something they have not addressed properly yet. But that said, though, they have bought some players in the window. that might have just boosted them in terms of like, especially like forward players. They've got the likes of Marlon in and Rashford and Asensio. Obviously, scored 2 goals against Chelsea on the weekend, so they might be a bit better than that. But I think you will. That's the longest answer to that question ever, but I think you will. But going back to our game against each other on Wednesday, it should be an interesting one. But as I said, I think this is the game for the first time these two teams are playing each other, and it might not build up to be as big a game as it has done in the past, or even what we played when we played each other earlier in the season. I don't know how you feel on it potentially. Do you think it's a game that's probably a little bit? It stands out obviously in the fixture list, but do you think it's gone a little bit under the radar potentially as a kind of importance, I suppose, in terms of for both teams here?
Yeah, for sure. I think that just simply comes down to the stakes aren't as high because of the positioning of both of our teams on the table. But in terms of entertainment, it should be high action because both of our teams can't keep a goal out of our net. I know
Oh,
you guys the past few games have had a few clean sheets, but you gave up one the other day, so there's an avalanche around the corner.
yes.
But I could honestly see this match panning out pretty similar to how Newcastle and Nottingham Forest went. I could see you guys beating us in a 5-3 or 4-3 thriller.
Jeez. Well, I'm going
No,
on
seriously,
Wednesday.
because
I'm
our
going on
defense
Wednesday. I'm,
is
I'm
good.
hoping you're right, mate. I really am. Like that would be amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Both teams have kind of from a Liverpool is a very weird game. I'm going to go back to Liverpool game just a little bit because we kind of I expected more goals in that game as well, right? You expected 4-0. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was. I thought you might have got a couple potentially, but then scoring maybe 3 or 4. I thought there'd be loads of goals in the game because when I've seen Man City recently, especially in the games against Real Madrid, it really showed that when you go at Man City's defence, there's problems there. And I think Liverpool played slightly different, didn't they? They were very professional, I think, for it. They took their chances early doors and then they limited Man City and controlled the game. Tottenham won't do that at all. I love to see us control the game like Liverpool did there, but it won't be because we're chaotic as well at the moment. We're still trying to work each other. Like, I think the team are still trying to work each other out and trying to work out like what is the best 11 at the moment. Players are coming back from injuries and things like that. But we do offer opportunities. Ipswich, I think, had more opportunities than us, I think, in the game on the weekend, and we won 4-1. So we're quite clinical when we get in front of goals on certain games. But I think it will be lots of back and forth. I think we'll give. Be interesting actually. Who do you think Man City will line up? Actually, do you think he would make many changes in this game?
Well, under the assumption that Haaland isn't going to play, his props are listed over here in New York, so that's no guarantee he will play, but maybe it's indicative that he will. My sleeper app says that he's not playing.
Yeah, there's a lot of news saying he's a big doubtful.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So under the assumption that he can't play, and we're probably going to get into another game where Man City have zero crossing threat unless it's a corner kick.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like yet again it's going to end up like a basketball game because your team thrives in chaos. Our team defensively is vulnerable in transition and can't handle chaos. And innately, because Haaland isn't playing, Foden and Marmoush are more mobile with the ball at their feet. So I think this is just going to play into a high scoring, a messy affair, honestly.
Yeah, and I think it will come down. It won't be the team that. It won't necessarily be the team that shows
Is
the
the
best
best. It's
attacking.
going to be the team that like it doesn't collapse the worst.
Yeah, it
Who's going to
is.
win?
Who can defend the key moments? And I think actually, that in truth, when we played each other early in the season, we got a great result against you guys. I mean, at the time, that felt like a real statement win when we beat you guys 4-0 at the Etihad. I was like, wow, like that was an incredible performance. James Maddison in particular was brilliant in that game. And I think he could be a real key, I think, maybe on Wednesday night. I think the key for Maddison in particular, I always felt with Maddison for a long time that if Maddison plays well, Tottenham plays well, right? I always felt that. But actually, I've slightly changed my thinking around that. I think it's sort of the other way around. If the rest of the Tottenham team play well, it brings Maddison into the game a lot more. So if other players are doing their jobs maybe slightly behind him, he gets the opportunity to be creative, get on the ball and hurt teams. Because I always think back, like when he does put an England shirt on, he's playing with really good players. He's playing with like the likes of Declan Rice in that midfield and maybe Jude Bellingham. And because they're very good at what they do, he then plays really well, in my opinion. I don't think because he plays well, Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham play well. Like, clearly not. Them two are very good players. It's they because they play well, he plays well. And I think that's what Tottenham need to make sure that they have got someone in that midfield. And it might be someone like Rodrigo Bentancur. It might be Lucas Bergvall. It might be both of them. But they need to have a big game, I think, in terms of having a bit of control in that midfield, a bit of bravery against Man City, and finding the likes of Maddison, who can then kind of find them pockets, and then he finds you. Maybe it's Son on the left, maybe it's Brennan Johnson on the right. I'd imagine it might be Tell down the middle on Wednesday night, and that could really maybe hurt Man City, I think, potentially. So, in a weird, sick way, I can't believe it. I'm also a little bit optimistic about it on Wednesday now, because I don't think if you asked me maybe a week or two ago, I would have thought, well, this is just going to be an absolute thumping like every other game. But we have started to build a bit of momentum, I think, over the last week or two, and it's good to see some players back in the squad. You're just kind of like, yeah, not sure.
No, my thing is like the reason why James Maddison is so effective with England is because Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham have engines. The one big criticism of Daniel Levy is that he doesn't replenish that midfield role, because we all know that James Maddison isn't classified as defensively responsible, and for him to be operating at his best, he has to be the furthest advanced midfielder.
It's a funny one, because I'd be honest with you, I didn't think we would call it like the number 6 role, maybe, if you're looking at it from a shirt number perspective, like someone who plays in that central midfield that plays maybe a little bit defensively, but also, for me, it's got to be good on the ball. I mean, what Rodri does, Rodri's the best at it, right? Can you find someone that does something similar to him or has similar attributes? I don't think we have anyone good enough to play that position at Tottenham. I really don't. And we need someone who can control the game and dominate the game, I think, from that midfield. If you can get that, it opens up lots for you as a team, I think, personally. And I think you could argue, say, well, that was that a position we should have got in January? I'll be honest with you, no, I don't think it was. I 100% think it should be a priority for the summer, because I think it's such a big position to get right. I really, really do. Like, I don't think it's a position where getting someone in January is going to actually solve all your problems there. It feels like such a bigger piece. And I think for me, that position for Tottenham needs proper investment. Real needs proper investment. And I don't think they should necessarily worry about a profile in terms of, I do think with Tottenham, it's all about age comes into it a lot. Like, they always look for young prospect players, that diamonds in the rough that could end up being really good players. They never really go after the player that's ready-made as such. And I think I genuinely believe this is a position that they might need to. That said, we might already have someone in the squad that's already like that. Archie Gray's never actually been able to play his actual position yet. And he's been a player that's been terrific in really filling in so many games in positions there where he's never played at left back before. He never played at centre half, I don't think, before. He obviously played a fair few games, I think, at right back for Leeds, but his best position is centre midfield. Maybe he's the guy that goes in there. But then again, it's also a lot to ask an 18/19-year-old to maybe play a position where I think there's a bit of experience needs to be kind of had there, potentially, like you've got with Rodri, who's absolutely terrific. And obviously Arsenal got like Declan Rice. But even I go back to Tottenham teams not that long ago, we had Moussa Dembele, who was excellent in being that strong presence in that midfield that can get on the ball, carry it, and move us up the pitch. Before that, it was Luka Modric, right? Who's one of the best of all time in that midfield position, where they just knew how to run a game. Like, they played the game in their own, but they knew how to play the game in a different pace. If we want to speed things up, he knew how to speed things up, the whole team. If we need to slow things down, he knew how to do it. That's the sort of player I think Tottenham are really missing in that midfield. And I think if they get that position right, they will be a much improved team and be a lot more high up the table than maybe 12th.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's just like I think he has less creativity, but I think a player that profiles that would help Tottenham Hotspur would be Edson Alvarez on West Ham, just because he's so good at putting out fires and just absolutely.
I'm not a big fan of him.
You're not?
I'm not. I watch him sometimes. I think
Oh man.
he puts out fires, but I don't think he's any good on the ball.
I honestly, this I could be completely wrong, but I just think West Ham lack a lot of options. And before this new manager, Graham Potter, I think they were just systematically garbage. And like before that, like he had a lot of success in the Netherlands, and he's really popular over here because there's a huge
The
Mexican
Mexican,
population in the
yeah,
United
yeah,
States. So he's a superstar over here. And people don't realize, but he could play center back, he could play right back, center, defensive mid, center mid. He could play literally anywhere. He's so versatile. So I think it's more of with him, he's getting lost in the shuffle because they have so many bodies to sort through. They brought in Guido Rodriguez, they have Thomas Suchek, they have a lot of central midfield players where he's not getting consistent starting time. And I know there's a lot of teams that are around Tottenham's level, specifically a team like Fulham that's looking to replace the Joao Paulinho role. Like this
yeah.
guy, Edson Alvarez, is, in my opinion, in that realm of rare, seasoned, but you're gonna get some value and a bargain on him because like he has tons of Premier League experience, and you're not gonna have to pay an arm and a leg because he's a Mexican player. It's not like he's from a top five European nation where he's gonna get the price run up on him.
Yeah, I've watched a bit of that because I've got a lot of friends who are West Ham fans, and I've watched a fair bit of West Ham. He's a good player, but I always felt he's not good on the ball. That was my thing with him. He's good at sensing danger and getting stuck in and that sort of thing. But when it comes to like, I really think we need a player that, especially how Ange wants to play, you need a player that's comfortable on the ball in positions where you're going to be under pressure a little bit because the game's a little bit riskier in the way that we want to play. And I think you just need that player that can go either side and kind of manage it from that point of view. But we'll see. We'll see. Right. Should we go into some predictions for obviously we got our game, but we also want to do some predictions, I suppose, for the rest of the Premier League slate that's on across Tuesday, Wednesday, and I think it's one game on Thursday as well. Should we talk brief? When do you want to do? Should we do our game now, or should we do it to the end? How do you want to play it, Troy?
Let's do ours first.
Let's do ours first. Right, You kind of alluded to what you think is going to happen from a correct score point of view, but go on. I'm going to let you go first, and then I'll follow you up. And also, I know you are a betting man, Troy. What if you got any tips for any? If you've got a tip for any game, just let me know. Let our viewers know. And
Okay, I
we'll
got
jot
some
them down as
in the
well.
later fixtures, but this one I'm not super buzzing about because there's potential rotation on the short week. So
Yeah,
everyone keep in mind for every single one of these fixtures, if we think someone's going to play and they don't play, we didn't see the lineups. It's a short week, short turnover. There is going to be rotation, whether we like it or not. So going into the Tottenham versus Man City game, I think that Tottenham are going to win 3-1, honestly. I think it's going to be chaos, and Man City are going to struggle yet again with this similar profile of Foden and Marmoush in the box. No aerial threat. I think Man City will have loads of possession, not take enough risks, and do nothing with it. I think the key player for Tottenham in this game is going to be Dejan Kulusevski because James Madison's slowly picking up form, and he's not going to want to lose his starting spot.
I will be over the moon if that was the case, Troy. I really would. I, I've got a sneaky feeling for Tottenham as well on Wednesday. As I said, if you asked me a couple of weeks ago what I think the scoreline would be, I don't think I would have been predicting the Tottenham win. Goals, I think for sure. Um, I just think with Man City play, these are silly things that you made to factor in, but the fact that you played obviously on Sunday as well in the later kickoff against Liverpool in a hard game, And we played obviously Saturday. I think there's an element of that might help Tottenham a little bit as well in terms of a little bit of freshness. And I do wonder about Man City's mentality at the moment in terms of how they're going to be feed. It'll be very interesting to see whether Man City are going to have a kind of feel sorry for themselves attitude, or will show the rest of the world kind of thing that we are still one of the best teams and we've won 4 titles in a row. So that will be a very interesting dynamic. But I'm going to go with a Spurs win as well. I was going to go 3-1 as well, but I don't know if I should be doing the same. I'm going to go 3-1. I'm going to go with 3-1 as well. I agree. I'm on the same thing for you. In terms of any tips in the game from a betting perspective, it's an hard game to kind of make that kind of call. I think there'll be lots of shots in this match, though. So I don't know if this is something that people bet on at all, but I've done in the past. If you're looking for, you can bet on match total shots, over and under shots. I should actually have a quick look to see what the line is, because it might be something ridiculous, and then I'll go, don't even bother with it. Let me have a quick look. Oh, 26.5 is the shot line. I'd go overs on that. I think there'll be plenty of shots in the game. I really do. But I think Man City will get opportunities to pop off opportunities against Tottenham, because we always do that. But I think Tottenham will have more than enough opportunities, I think, against a Man City team that are just not dominating teams as much as they used to anymore. You might have a lot of possession, but it's not. There's always opportunity. So that will be my little tip. I think overs on shots in the game, and I will agree with Troy this one. I think it'll be 3-1 Tottenham. Right, that's on the Wednesday. We've kind of concluded the Tottenham Man City part of all of this. Let's go on to the games on Tuesday. So let's go with Brighton versus Bournemouth. This looks a good game, doesn't it? These are 2 teams that play good football, play a really nice style. I can't imagine it being 0-0 or low scoring. I think but I think both teams will get on the score sheet. Bournemouth obviously had a disappointing result against Wolves, but I think part of that was obviously the sending off in the first half that killed them. And I think Wolves have been a bit sneakily good recently. I think they've not been as bad as maybe where their position actually is in the league. And Brighton, they obviously got a very good result against a very poor Southampton. Was it Southampton they played? Yeah, very poor Southampton side. I'm going to go for a score draw in this one. I'm going to go 2-2 is my correct score.
Yeah, that's funny. I'm going 2-2 correct score as well.
Oh, here we go.
My number one betting angle from this is Marcus Tavernier to get a goal or an assist. This is a player that I recommended for my game week 26 transfer video last week. And if you play sleeper fantasy football or Fantrax, he still got 9 points because he wins so many tackles, attempts shots with the key
He's
pass.
a good player, isn't he? He's a very good player, Tavernier. Like, he's an underrated player, I think, in the Premier League, and in particular in that Bournemouth side.
Yeah, and when you're playing sleeper fantasy football and you're getting points for that category coverage, Marcus Tavernier is a fantasy machine. I think him to get a goal or an assist in this fixture is fantastic. Also, another one to keep an eye out for. Iraola said Evan Nielsen could have played last game, but they didn't want to risk it because of the match situation. They were down a man. They're saying there's no reason to even risk bringing this guy back on. So I think it's possible we see 60 minutes from him today. I think it's highly unlikely we see 90, but I think we'll see probably 60 minutes from Evan Nielsen. And I'm going for 2-2 draw as well, because Brighton, time and time again, what separates them from a mid-table team to a fringe top table team of the European League, Conference League / Europa League qualification level is they can't put out games they should win. They're steadily cruising in the lead of games and they collapse at the end, or they're losing and they come back just to tie it. So exactly, this is going to be a game where I think it's a 2-2 draw.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be good. I think for me, like another game, actually, I think there could be plenty of shots actually as well. These are two really good front-footed teams. Like the Bournemouth have got some great attack. I mean, I'm a big fan of Semenyo, Bournemouth as well. He looks a real good player. I think he'll potentially get a big move, I think, in the summer to somewhere. But you mentioned obviously Evan Nielsen up front. He could be back. They've obviously got likes of Cliver, who's been phenomenal for him as well. He's normally quite good for he's been quite good for a goal recently, isn't he, Clive? Or penalties. He's been getting lots of penalties for. But maybe a penalty in this game might be the prediction I might go for. Actually, as a little tip, because I think penalties have been quite. They've been quite sort of a thing in both these teams. I think, especially Bournemouth, they've been getting loads. But I think Brighton have been in particular as well. They've been getting a couple themselves. So I'm going to go for a penalty in the game and 2-2. Right, next game up is I'm going to go for Wolves v Fulham. I'm going to let you go first on this one.
Yeah, there's two teams, as if you watch any of my content, fantasy wise or predictions wise, there's two teams that aren't Man City that I really think have a good advantage in the betting market slash fantasy Premier League market. And that is Fulham and that is Brighton. I'm going back to Fulham here. They had a really disappointing loss this past weekend, and they're going to look back to bounce back against Wolves. I know they have some injuries, but I ultimately just think the way that Marco Silva has this team well drilled, that they're just better than Crystal Palace. Yes, I know Crystal Palace don't give up a ton of goals when they're at home, but Aston Villa had the luxury of bringing on a lot of their impact players in the second half of last game, which is why they won, and they didn't play the full 90. So the likes of Marcus Rashford and Asensio had the full 90 minutes on his legs, but Rashford only had 45 minutes. So there's going to be guys that are on Aston Villa absolutely buzzing to get some attacking output in this game. So I'm going to go with Villa to get a 2-0 win versus Crystal Palace.
Oh, we talked about two different games there.
Oh, my bad.
We're talking about Wolves v Fulham. I was like, well, we could get your
2-0 Fulham. My bad. I don't know why I said Crystal Palace.
It's the next game up. That's why. Don't worry. So you're going for Fulham to win 2-0.
Yep.
Interesting. I think this is. I alluded to earlier. I think Wolves have been sneakily better than maybe the position in the table kind of suggests. They got obviously a good win against Bournemouth, which I think was massive for them. And in fact, they have actually picked up a few results. I think they've had 3 wins now in their last 4 games, and they're at home against the Fulham side that have been playing all right as well, to be fair. But I always feel Fulham are a better team. I always felt like they're a better team at home than they are away. I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go Wolves on this one. Just got a sneaky feeling for him in this game. I think Cunha's playing out of his skin at the moment for Wolves, and I think they could do with they could definitely do with another win or two just to try and keep them away from that bottom 3. The other thing with Fulham, I'm not seeing loads of Fulham, but I've been hearing, mate, and I could be wrong with this, and if there's any Fulham fans watching this, you can correct me if I'm right or wrong. Part of the early season, Emil Smith-Rowe was really dominating in that midfield for him. And apparently it feels like I'm hearing reports he's just been a little bit off the ball. He's been subbed off in a few games recently. He's not maybe impacting the game as much as he once was. And I just wonder, I think if Fulham are going to get anything in the game, he's going to have to be a really crucial player. And I think if he's not quite firing, I think it might not be a night for Fulham in the end. I'm going to go for a Wolves win. I'm going to go 2-1 Wolves. Actually.
Wow.
I'm going to go to. I know I've gone totally opposite. One thing I will say. So the one thing I will go for is I think goals could be scored. I think both teams to score is a good shout. I think Wolves have been in games where they are susceptible to letting in goals, but they've been scoring plenty of goals as well in their matches. And I think they can. I think they will score against them. So I think both teams to score. If you're looking for a tip, I think something like that would be kind. Both teams score over 2.5 goals. Probably combine it as a 2. Would be kind of where I'll go with that. But yeah, I'll go for a Wolves win. Go for something different. Right, we'll move on to Crystal Palace versus Aston Villa. Interesting game, actually. Both teams come off a good win on the weekend. Palace obviously winning away at Craven Cottage against Fulham. Villa obviously getting a good result against Chelsea, where actually they don't normally have a good result against Chelsea. They've got quite a poor record at Villa Park against the Blues. But this feels a real tight game for me. Like, I think a lot of people will look at Aston Villa. I'm just going to have a quick look at the odds, actually. Blimey, wasn't expecting that, actually. Aston Villa are 9-5. So that would be what are they, plus 190, you guys over in the States?
Plus 175, or at least where I have it available.
Yeah, so, and Crystal Palace are around about plus 140, right?
Mm-hmm.
My gut. Oh, I'll go for a draw. I'm going to sit on the fence. I'm going 1-1. I almost went Crystal Palace because I've been impressed with him recently. I think Mateta's been playing out of his skin as well in a Crystal Palace show. I've been really, really impressed with him. I'd definitely be looking at him to score on Tuesday night, and maybe shot lines potentially as well. But I'm going to go for 1-1. I'm going to sit on the fence because the reason why I've not gone for Aston Villa is because I'm alluding to it. I just don't think they're very good at playing following up one game with another game in short space of time. So when they've been in the Champions League, they've not really done well the weekend following it. And I just get the feeling that they've not quite worked that out yet. I think a point at Selhurst Park will be a good result for him. I'm going to go for a draw, 1-1. What are you going for?
I'm going with Aston Villa to win 3-1, and a couple tips I'm going for here. I'm going Luca Dean assist because Ian Matson played this past weekend, so it's most likely that Lucas Dean's going to play on the left side, and Marcus Rashford to have a goal or an assist because him and Luca Dean are going to be overlapping with each other nonstop on the left side. Marcus Rashford didn't have the full 90 minutes on his legs this past weekend. And as Glasner has referred to in the past, Eze can't handle a full workload. He's basically been playing with a nagging injury the entire season. So if you're into betting unders, maybe if you see shot attempts or fantasy score unders, if those markets are available to you guys in the UK, look under for Eze because I'm honestly thinking about not starting him this week in sleeper fantasy
He's
football.
really got off the. There's a couple of interesting players you brought up there. You brought up Rashford, who I think, by the way, surprise, surprise, he's now looking like a proper player again in an Aston Villa shirt, right? Because he clearly wasn't at Man United for a little while, but he's looked good. He didn't start the game, I think, on Tuesday, coming as a sub, caused a few problems, and he was. I think he assisted the goal as well, didn't he? The final goal for Asensio to win the game. But you mentioned Eze. Now Eze's a player I've been really like saying such amazing things, but he's been a bit quiet recently, hasn't he? He's not quite maybe had the impact that he has done in the past for Crystal Palace. But they've had other players stepping up. I think the likes of Mateta has been like extremely good leading the line for them. I think that's helped, but they need to get Eze kind of firing and being more prominent, I suppose, from a final third because he used to have shots for fun, didn't he, in games as well? I think as well.
Elise opened up a lot for him,
Yes.
honestly. And when Ismail Assar was in form in the beginning of the season, no one was raising their eyebrows at the Eze performances. But as soon as Sarr's form fell off recently, I think we've noticed Eze's form dip off as well. Because, like I said, Crystal Palace in that five at the back formation, they're basically running like a striker with two attack mids where that are narrow that Elise and Sar is playing in the position that Elise was. So if he's not naturally attracting attention to him by creating offensive output, it's going to be easier for defenses to focus on Eze and shut them down.
Yeah.
That's why you're seeing the goals come from Munoz and Mateta.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Right. So far we've predicted 4 games. We've gone exactly the same on 2 of them. And we've gone probably almost completely different on the other 2. So we're going up to the 5th game. And I've got a feeling, I think we're all going to be in line on this one. It's Chelsea versus Southampton. Um, as bad as Chelsea's form's been, I think this is going to be the day that Chelsea pick up a win. I think because I can't give any kind of hope for Southampton at the moment. They're just terrible, aren't they? They're absolutely shocking. And if you are a team that's in desperate need of a win, you need to play Southampton pretty quickly because they've just not got to terms with the Premier League, have they? They obviously they had Russell Martin obviously in charge, who brought them up from the Championship into the Premier League. He obviously had his identity and style, the way he wanted to play, but it was probably a bit too naive maybe for a team with Southampton's quality. Is it Juric? It's the manager now at Southampton. It's not overly improved, is it? And I'll be honest with you, I can only see Chelsea. I'm going to go Chelsea 3-0. I don't think it's going to be. I mean, if Chelsea were a bit more, if they were feeling a little bit more themselves, I would go as far as they could be absolutely anything. And I think they absolutely destroyed them at St Mary's, didn't they, earlier in the season? But I'm going to go a relatively conservative 3-0 Chelsea win here. I'm assuming you're going to go something not too dissimilar.
Okay, so I'm going to tie this in with a little fantasy angle really quick. I got a comment on one of my videos today. Someone was saying, "Oh, should I get rid of Palmer for this week? Blah, 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 blah." Absolutely not. These next two fixtures of Southampton and Leicester City are amazing coming up. I'm going with a 5-1 win, and I think Cole Palmer to have over 1.5 goals, I think is a good shout because he's been ice cold, and I'm not talking about
He
the celebration.
has.
So
And I've been,
we're going
and
to
I,
have a breakout performance. And another thing that people don't want to talk about is if you look at Cole Palmer's stats where he has multi-attacking output return games, the vast majority of them are versus bottom six teams. So that's another thing to keep an eye out for. He
Ah.
preys on huge performances against bottom
So
six
you're
teams.
saying he basically
He's the Romelu Lukaku of
he
20.
feeds off the like the bottom of the barrel basically of teams. Yeah. I mean, I feel really harsh. If any Southampton fans watching, I do apologise, but you got to believe that you're rubbish,
We're
basically.
here to make money, not here to make friends.
Exactly. And I think for me, yeah, I think I've got Palmer in my fantasy team, and I was very close to getting him out of my team this weekend actually because I was thinking he's not done anything for like feels
You
forever,
have to keep for the
but he's got
next
this
two.
game, isn't he? Like he's got to stay
Yeah.
in because this is where the form could completely switch. So yeah, all right, we've gone 5-1 and 3-0. Very comprehensive. Next game up, I think this could be a tight one to call potentially. Brentford versus Everton. I'm going to let you go first on that one.
Oh, this is fun. This is fun. I don't think Dwight McNeil's going to be back yet. I know he's close to a return, and it's crazy because I think Dwight McNeil's supremely talented. And it's wild to me because he's only 25 years old. It seems like he's been in the Premier League forever. I
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
found out he was 25 or 26, I was like, there is no way he's that
He has
young.
been around forever, isn't he? Like, is he only
Yeah.
25? I did not know that. He's only 25. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, he's not that old. So I was like, you know what? Okay. We see Beto, he's in top form. This David Moyes Everton team is clearly not afraid to take risks. They take way more than under Sean Dyche. So Brentford, they're extremely well drilled. They love counterattacking. But I think I'm going to go with a 0-0 here.
Oh, do you know what? I don't totally disagree with this. I think it'll be an unders game. And when I say unders, like normally the spread's around 2.5 goals, right?
Yeah.
I think, but I actually do believe Everton won't. They do you, would you say Brentford are a bit of a counter-attacking team themselves?
For sure. For sure.
And
And this Everton team blew
definitely
up
are.
a huge lead this past weekend versus United. So I'm pretty sure the main point of focus from one game to the next is not to be leaky and tighten up.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think Everton will be more cautious away from home in a game like this against Brentford than maybe they were at home against Manchester United, right? Um, and it'd be a case of for me, well, can Brentford break this Everton defence down? Is the key
Because
to maybe
Branthwaite's back and he's been a rock.
yeah. Although, did he have a bit of an injury towards the end of the game against Man United? I know he was struggling a little bit with fitness, so it'd be interesting to see whether he'll be fit enough to maybe play this game because he's only come back recently, hasn't he? So we'll see. Or nil is very. Oh,
It says he's good to go on sleeper.
yeah, I'm. This could be a. What are the odds in this game? Because I'd imagine Brentford are favourites, but they're even money favourites. Oh, that is trappy. They're all trappy price.
Scream 0-0 draw to me.
Yeah, I'm tempted to go 1-0 Brentford. I was going to, one way or the other, I was going to go definitely an unders game, low scoring game. I don't think there's going to be many goals in this. I just think Brentford have been playing well. They play well at home. You've got that forward line that I think can breach this Everton effect. Man United did manage to get 2 goals against them in the end, right? Brentford are a better forward line than Manchester United. So I'm gonna go 1-0 Brentford, but I do agree with you. I think it's gonna be a low scorer. Definitely be a low scorer. And talking to Man United, they're up next. Manchester United versus Ipswich. I do want to see the odds on this game. Wow. So Man United at 8-15. This is the problem in this game, right? I think these are two teams you can't trust.
Yeah.
Full stop, right? Let's
Yeah.
be honest. you would not say Man United are going to win at 8-15, and nor would I turn around and go, you should be backing Ipswich at 5-1, because you couldn't put the trust on these two teams one way or the other. I watched the Manchester United, well, I obviously watched Ipswich as well, but I watched the Manchester United Everton game that was before. They have got big problems in the forward positions, I think, at the moment. I genuinely believe Rasmus Højlund is just not. He's not the one for them at all. He's a very game runner in the sense that he will try and run channels, but he's got no strength. Like the Everton defence was just bullied him off the ball. Like he had no way of holding the ball up, and then you had the likes of Joshua Zirkzee who were just behind him, and I've never seen a player just give the ball away so easily in advanced positions. He to me, I've not been sold on them two, and at the moment with the injuries that they've got currently, and the fact that they got rid of a few players, didn't they, in the window? Like they got rid of Rashford on loan. Anthony's now gone to Betis, and he looks a different player. All of a sudden, every time Betis play, I see some sort of highlight from Anthony, and he's scoring goals, setting up goals. You're thinking, where's that player been for them? I just think they struggle going forward, Manchester United. I really, really do. They probably need to play Garnacho a little bit more. He was on the bench for some reason against Everton. But I look at Ipswich and I go, I just don't know what I trust there. So this is a real horrible game to predict. I think this will be a draw. And I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I don't think either team are going to be good enough to maybe keep. I don't know. I'll go 1-1. Could be another 0-0. Could be another 0-0. But 1-1.
I'm going with a disgusting 1-0 win for Manchester United.
To be kind of
a classic Manchester United performance where you will say at the end of the game, great result, horrible performance. And
yeah,
they're gonna
do you know what? I wouldn't be surprised one bit. I'm not totally against that. As I said, I've got no real strong opinion on this game other than I think it's two real poor sides playing against one another, lacking confidence. Liam Delap could be a bit of a potential game. He's probably one of the few players that are in both sides that are playing with a high amount of confidence. But whether Ipswich are good enough to support him in making an impact in that game, we shall see. Because Man United, in fairness to them, they're not terrible. I don't think they're terrible defensively, but they're just terrible. Like as a backline, I don't think they're too bad. But midfield and forward positions, they look bad in with the ball, and I think they also look a bit of trouble off it as well. Like there's not a nice balance there at the moment, and I just don't rate their forward play. They're probably better off trying to play some of their youth players. They've got loads of kids that seem to be on the bench at the moment. They might be better off trying to play one of them. But yeah, I think we've kind of got to a point where it's going to be a low scorer. We're not expecting much from these two. But the next game I think could be very interesting. It's Nottingham Forest versus Arsenal. And I'm going to let you take the lead on this one.
Yeah, we know Man City don't like to take risks, but Arsenal does not like to take risks. Watching this team play is like watching paint dry or grass grow. They only score off set pieces. They're a complete joke. Yes, I'm serving it back up, even though they're higher than us.
Look, as a Spurs fan, keep on saying.
I don't care. They don't play entertaining football. That's just the truth of the matter.
But do you not think that's because Arsenal have always been kind of a team that you'd watch and they play really attractive football most, like through the seasons, right? And even under Arteta, they've played some good football in previous, but this year they seem to have gone to a route of like, we're just going to be a nasty, bullyish team that's going to be physical. And yes, we're going to dominate from set pieces, but they have lost their way going forward, haven't they? They've lost that kind of that fluidity that you'd probably most expect Arsenal teams to kind of play like. But I agree with you. I think they just don't look. They've not looked right all season, and I think it's very interesting that people. Oh, I think it's mainly Arsenal fans that felt that they were in a title race and a real opportunity. I just felt this was just inevitable what was going to happen at this point.
Yeah, I mean, their captain, Martin Odegaard's underperforming. If you drafted him in sleeper fantasy football in the first or second round, you're punching yourself in the face because Ederson has the same amount of assists as him this season in the Premier League. So that's first and foremost a huge problem. Gabriel Jesus and Kai Havertz are out with injury. They don't actually have a striker. Martinelli and Saka are out. I'm going to be honest here. Nottingham, they gave up a bunch of goals versus Newcastle this past weekend. A couple of them could have been avoided. One of them was off a set piece that honestly probably shouldn't have been called. I think Nuno Espirito Santos is going to have these guys locked in and say, we had that game. We went to St. James and scored 3 goals, but you guys fucked up. That's just the truth, right? And I think Nottingham Forest, paired with Arsenal's not fun play style, we're going to get a Nottingham Forest 1-0 win. Chris Wood off a corner kick.
Oh, just to rub it even more.
Just to rub it in
Yeah,
against the set
get a
piece
set
king.
piece in.
Chris Wood.
I watched the Forest Newcastle game yesterday. It was a good game actually because obviously they went 1-0 up off the mistake of a Newcastle kind of throw in and
Callum Hudson-Odoi 14-1 first goal scorer. I hit that game just to point that out there.
oh, here we go, here we go. I mean, yeah, I mean he scored a good goal as well. I mean, it was I think there was a big long period in that first half where Forest were 1-0 up, but they had zero, like there was like zero kind of touches in the opposition penalty box. But like
Yeah, Hudson-Odoi scored a crazy long shot off of
yeah,
that.
just some 25 yards out, pointing out, and they never actually got back in the penalty area. It was a weird game, wasn't it? Because they went 4-1 down, and then second half, I think Newcastle retracted quite a bit more. They weren't as aggressive as they were in the first half. And Forest found themselves back into the game. And they're a decent side, Forest. They've got some good players. They've built a good from a team that's got promoted not that long ago. They've actually built a squad that's pretty strong, got some good, strong players across the pitch. And I don't think this will be an easy game for Arsenal. I really don't. And look, Arsenal will be very sore after that defeat against West Ham. But as you rightly pointed out, they look blunt. They miss Saka so much. He's been like what Rodri's been for Man City, in my opinion, in terms of that bigger miss, I think, for a team. Like he's the one that really opens the doors, I think, for that Arsenal front line. Like his bit of pace and his trickery. And I always look at Saka and I always wonder, he's obviously a very good player, but he never always looks amazing to me. He never he's strange, but he's
not very flashy. He's not very flashy, but what he does is very consistent, and consistency is one of the most underappreciated.
Yeah, no, he is. He's very efficient, very, very consistent. You're absolutely spot on. He's not a flashy winger at all, right? He's not, but he is consistent in terms of being a threat for a team, basically. And Arsenal, it goes through him. It really does clearly go through him. When they had Odegaard out for 2 months, I don't think they missed him. And I think they always felt that they were going to miss him. But actually, they found a way to play without him that still meant that they were winning games. Now Saka's out, it's been a different ball game altogether. And I think Kai Havertz is obviously out for the season as well. Not that I'm the biggest Kai Havertz fan, but it doesn't help them. And they've not got that. They're now putting Marino in. I mean, he's bonkers. Anyway, in my prediction, I fancy Forest. I think this is going to really put a nail in the coffin of Arsenal. I'm going to go 2-0 Forest. I think they get 2 goals against them. I really do. You've gone for 1-0. I'm going to go for 2-0. I agree. I think Chris Wood might get on the score sheet. Nice header from maybe a set piece. And then I fancy one of their wingers to score, maybe Alanga. For me, he's a player that needs to add a few more goals to his game, I think, at Forest. But he's a good wide man for them. And I think he might get on the score sheet as well. 2 more games. We've got Liverpool versus Newcastle, which has obviously been like, it's one of the sort of, feels like historically one of the big games of the Premier League from, especially in the 90s and that. Liverpool at home. I mean, Newcastle, obviously, they've been weird, haven't they, Newcastle? They've got obviously the result against Forest, but they've had some bad results and they've not quite been firing maybe as we'd expect. And obviously Liverpool are just a well-oiled machine at the moment. Got obviously a great result against you guys yesterday and looked really good there. And actually, I think the very key thing for Liverpool, you might touch upon this, is that they rested players, didn't they? Even in that win, the likes of Nunes, didn't play. Gakpo come on for 15 minutes, I think. Jota didn't come on. So they've got options to really freshen it up against Newcastle, I think, midweek. I still think Salah's going to play. I don't think Salah's not going to. They're not going to drop him, but they could mix it up. Maybe Diaz might get a rest in this game potentially. Um, I can't see anything but a Liverpool win here. I think Liverpool's so good at home as well. That's the thing, right, for me. Um, I'm going to go 2-0 Liverpool. I think it'll be another professional job. I think they might keep a clean sheet against this Newcastle side. I know they're not bad. They're pretty good going forward, usually Newcastle, but I think they had such a tough game themselves on Sunday. You do wonder if it's taken a bit out of them. But I'm going to go 2-0 Liverpool.
Okay. I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw, but I think the bet of the game is Newcastle to score first. This is historically a team I like to take to score first almost every game. And we've seen time and time again that Eddie Howe loves to have hot starts, and this team historically fades off late because they don't have too much depth on the bench. Newcastle, that is, because they had to comply with those PSR rules and offload a few extra players like Elliot Anderson and Minte that they didn't want to. But I'm looking for Newcastle to score first here. I'm not confident they're going to win the game, so I'm going 2-2 draw, but my money is going on Newcastle to score first.
I'm just having a look what kind of odds you get for that. It's not something I normally would go for. Team to score. I'm having a look. First team to score. So 21-10. So you're getting around just over plus 200 for that. That's not bad. It's not bad at all. I like that. I like his pick. But yeah, 2-2, 2-0, gone slightly different. Look, either way, I think Liverpool are going to find a way of not losing the game against a team that could cause them a couple of problems. But I just think with Newcastle, they're kind of there, but they're kind of not. I think they do it in fits and starts, I think, in games at the moment. They've not got a consistent 90 minutes out of their players for a few games. And I think that's probably why I'm just edging towards Liverpool on that one. And then last game, we've got West Ham versus Leicester City on the Thursday night. I'm going to go with West Ham. I'm going to keep this quite simple. I just think Leicester they've been in such bad form. They lost 10 or 11 of their last 12. I think they've just sacked their coaching staff today. Ruud van Nistelrooy's got rid of the kind of remaining coaching staff that was under Steve Cooper at Leicester. So obviously, look, it's not a happy camp at the moment. And I think with West Ham under Graham Potter, I think there is signs of improvement, albeit their position in the table isn't where they want to be. But obviously, great win against Arsenal. Before that, they've been kind of playing better, but not getting the results. They're obviously got to try and get used to a different style of play, because you've got to remember, it's not just Lopetegui. It's the years under David Moyes, and he's got a system and players that are playing to a certain way that obviously West Ham fans, I think, didn't enjoy as much anymore. It kind of it gets to the. I'd say, give you an example of a team that I think that could happen in time. Could be Nottingham Forest, right? Nuno gets them playing counter-attacking football, and that's kind of what Moyes was doing at West Ham, where it was not possession-based. It was letting the other team have the ball, and then we'll break on you with the likes of Bowen and Kudus and the likes, and Antonio basically chasing balls high up the pitch and things like that. And I think Forest are kind of, in some respects, a little bit similar, but the expectation of Forest fans is not quite there yet in terms of what they think Forest should be. But maybe that might change over time, and they may want to see a team that dominates the ball a lot more. And I think that's what happened with West Ham, is they had this way. It was working brilliantly, and it worked brilliant for them in Europe, but they didn't like the way that they were performing. And it was kind of one of them where they lost the game. It felt like a really bad loss because they never were in the game. So it's a change of philosophy. Potter's very much a forward-thinking manager, more possession-based manager, but it's going to take time, I think, for them players to kind of adapt to that, and that style where they've been coached. A lot of them have been coached under Moyes and Lopetegui, but I think they're getting there, and I think they will get a result against Leicester. Scoreline, I'm going to go 3-1 I've got a feeling Leicester might get a goal. I've never been convinced by West Ham defensively. I always think actually I always feel like they should be a better defensive team than they actually are. But I think they'll have enough goals in them. I think they've got enough threat with Bowen and Kudus up front. I'm trying to think. Can you remember who they played? Because it weren't Ferguson that played, was it, against Arsenal? It was Bowen, wasn't it? And I think Kudus might have played off on
Yeah.
the right. And
Kudus is so much better off the right. Oh my God.
I was saying this to some West Ham fans. I think because you've got Bowen, they all like Bowen's going to always have the kind of like he's going to have the number one spot. I think for maybe when everyone's fit, playing off that right hand side. But I think Kudus also wants to play there as well. But because Bowen's there, they're trying to find ways of getting Kudus into the game, whether it's more central or off on the left. I personally don't think he's as good a player off on the left. I think he wants to cut in. I think he wants to shoot, and I think they may move Bowen to centre forward a bit more, play Kudus off the right, and then try and find. I don't know if Somerville's been fit or not, but he might be the player they may go for out on that left hand side. They've got a lot of left footed players. West
Yeah.
Ham noticed. Even Pakatari's another one, isn't he? But yeah, I'm going to go 3-1 West Ham. I think they're a good thing for this, and they're playing another team that's desperate.
I'm going with a 2-0 win for West Ham. My game week 27 number one transfer target is Mohamed Kudus. He leads the Premier League in completed dribbles this season. Leicester City are absolutely garbage. And like I said, when he's operating off the right-hand side, cutting in on his left foot, he's very dangerous. And yes, he's underperformed in terms of goals and assists, but in terms of key passes and dribbling, he's not short of creating chances. It's more or less that the manager system and all the players around him let him down. And under Graham Potter, it looks like some of these players have a new lease of life and they're not as bad as we thought because heading into this season with all the money they spent, a lot of people expected West Ham to be in the Europa League spot by now.
Yeah, I agree. I think with West Ham, they bought so many players in the summer, didn't they? And I think it took time for them to gel. I did question some of their transfers. I thought some of them just didn't make. Like they brought in Fulkrug, who's obviously been brilliant for Dortmund, but before that, they were linked with Duran, who's a completely different profile of a striker to Fulkrug. So I don't know where they've gone from that type of striker that they wanted to Fulkrug. I think some of the recruitment's been a bit sketchy, but again, they made a lot of signings in the summer. I think they needed time to bed in. I'm not totally surprised by the season they've had, truth be told, but they could be a team that maybe under Potter they can improve to the back end of this season, and then maybe kick on next season for something a bit more bigger and better for him in the Premier League potentially. I hope not, because I'm a Spurs fan and we don't like West Ham that much and they don't like us. But we're being sensible. They've got the potential of a squad, I think, to maybe progress better than where they are currently at the moment. So look, that rounds up all our predictions. I'll recap it very quickly. We start off with Spurs Man City. We both agreed that Tottenham were going to win 3-1. I bloody hope so. We shall see. We shall see on that one. We both went for a 2-2 draw in the Brighton v Bournemouth game. Wolves v Fulham, we very much were different. I gone for 2-1 Wolves at home. You've gone for a Fulham win away, 2-0. Palace v Villa, you've gone for 3-1 Villa. I've gone for a 1-1 draw. Chelsea Southampton, we were very much in agreement that Chelsea are going to win this quite comfortably. You've gone 5-1, I've gone 3-0. Brentford Everton, we're not expecting goals in that game. We see that could be a bit of a war of attrition between the two. You've gone for 0-0. I've gone for 1-0 Brentford. Then we've got Man United, Ipswich, very similar kind of thing, but maybe slightly different in terms of the quality. You've gone for 1-0 Man United in sort of classic Fergie style way of winning it, I suppose. And I've gone for, I actually think 1-1. I just got a sneaky feeling that Ipswich are going to get a draw and the pressure is going to be on Amorim big time in that one. Forest v Arsenal, we've both gone for Nottingham Forest at home to 0 as well. You've gone 1-0. You've gone 1-0. I've gone 2-0 in that one. No bias from me. Then we've got Liverpool versus Newcastle. You've gone for a 2-2 draw in that one. I've gone for a 2-0 professional win for Liverpool there. And then to round things off, we've both gone for West Ham to beat Leicester. You've gone 3-1 and I've gone 2-0. I don't think that rounds things off for us, actually. That was really good. It was I hope you had fun. There was lots of talking points there. Um, could have talked about a load more things, and maybe we will do soon. But I hope you enjoyed it. Troy, thanks for coming on. I hope you enjoy it. Look, I hope Man City don't turn up on Wednesday night. But we'll see. It'll be an interesting game. I'm sure you'll see lots of recap on it from both of us, not just on channels like YouTube, but obviously follow us on TikTok if you are on TikTok. Obviously, I've got my main account, which is Paul's Play by Play. But if you are a Spurs fan, please do follow me at Sleeper Spurs, and you can follow this guy here at Sleeper Man City. I've got the details that will be below here with all of that information on all the different accounts that you can catch us on. And let's enjoy the Premier League games this week. Any final words from you before we round up?
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me on. Like you said before, you could follow me at Sleeper Man City on TikTok. Not only posting Man City stuff, I'm posting predictions for the Champions League,
You do,
Premier League, and I'm giving you fantasy football content every week in terms of transfer target, buy low, sell highs, all that fun stuff. So tune in, and thanks again for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Look, and genuinely, guys, please do follow his content because he is very, very good. Your fantasy football knowledge in particular, he's super impressive. People need to listen to this guy because he does know what he's talking about. And yeah, look, as Man City fans go, he's not a bad one, to be fair as well. So please give him a follow. And look, thanks for watching. Obviously, subscribe as well to this video or this channel rather. And I'll speak to you soon.